Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunrise Stroll and Chat. And there are a couple of reasons why I came inside to start today. And one of them is because we're almost at the autumn equinox, the September equinox, which divides summer and autumn for the northern hemisphere and winter and spring for the southern hemisphere. And we have people from South Africa here in Australia. They're southern hemisphere people. And I haven't seen too many from South America. Mexico is North America, actually, even though it's Latin America. It's part of one of the three countries of North America. So here we are today on the 21st of September. And there are a couple of other reasons why I'm in here. And before the sun gets more dramatic, I want to show you something that brought a lot of sunlight here. And it's this little musical instrument, a precursor of what one day will be a decent organ here, God willing. And a gentleman used to play here many, many times, almost every day. A little over 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, 3.5 years ago. His name was Daniel. And he would delight everybody with such gentle, beautiful music that was absolutely a thrill for all the people who came in. And some people just wandered in alone or with the family or with a group of pilgrims, sometimes quietly, sometimes with a guide speaking, and then they'd hear the music and they'd stop talking. And they entered into a very contemplative spirit. And Daniel rarely spoke to the people. If I invited him, then he would tell them that he was from Florida and that he lived here many, many years and all his children were in America. And then he was getting very ill. And he used to camp here just north of us where the boats are. He'd camp out. That's where he was living. That was his home. He moved there probably about 2.5 years ago, maybe a little longer. He was camping in other places before that. But he liked Magdala so much, he wanted to be here very easily. And he lived very simply in his little tent. I was never a guest there. And he would show up here every day, almost every day. And we were so happy with Daniel. But we were also very worried because it wasn't clear about his connections, his family. He never liked to talk too much. It was in his heart. He was keeping that to himself. And then there was another priest here, Father Timothy, and myself, and Father Timothy played bad cop and I played good cop. And it's nicer to play good cop, right? It's tough for parents when one of the parents has to play bad cop. So we cornered him once or twice, with reason, and asked him. So little by little things were sorted out, and we had contact with the family, and he was getting more grievously ill. And then one day he was found unconscious. And so then, thanks be to God, we had all those connections. And then he was taken to hospital to Rambam in Haifa, and he got extraordinary care. And then there were some other friends that came on the scene that he had here and that he knew from before. Sometimes people, don't let people know what their situation is. And then they found out, and they were visiting him also, taking good care of him. And I used to go to Haifa and I'd swim in the evening time after visiting Daniel. It was a nice little opportunity to swim in the Mediterranean. And then Daniel passed to eternal glory in the United States with his family, precisely on this day 2 years ago. So we pray that he is in eternal glory, and we pray for his family that have beautiful memories of him. And that's why I came in today. But there's one more reason why I came in today, and you're looking at it right here. Today is the feast of Matthew. So we're calling all people called Matty and Matthew and Matteo and famous Matteo Ricci, and many other Matthews, right? And so today is the day of Matthew, and Matthew was a guy from the lake. And people didn't like Matthew. He was hated. He was ostracized. But he had a lot of power because he was official tax collector for the Roman Empire. And they didn't have much scruples. And they, in general, tax collectors had a very bad reputation. And so the tax collectors, let's go out to the lake where Matty used to hang out. Oh, that was a little stone here. We got lots of stones, as you can see here. People drag them in their shoes. So here we got the sunrise again. This is sunrise stroll and chat, so we always have to anchor around the sunrise. Wow, isn't that nice? People, isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? So Matthew saw these sunrises, but he saw them from another angle. He saw them from Capernaum, which actually you could see from inside the Duke and Altum. I'll show you right now where Capernaum is from here. And I can understand why Daniel liked to camp out. He used to camp out just up over there, about 100 yards from here. That was his last station before he fell extremely ill. So now I want to show you Capernaum. So Capernaum is right out there. You can see water right out there. Let me get it open for you and put down the tripod here for a second. Just hold your horses. Just can't miss that sun. We got to come back for that every moment. It's like a lifeline. So here we are. So out here between the trees and that opening, we can actually see Capernaum. I'm watching it right now. And that's where Matthew was. So that's just a short distance from here. It's a boat ride across from here. This was a very busy port. I can imagine Matthew showed up here many times with his friends. And he was probably checking out people if their taxes were... if they were paying their taxes, you know. The IRS doesn't wait at home for you. They come to get you. And Matthew was coming to get them. And he was sitting at his office in Capernaum. And that's when this rabbi shows up. And he says, "Come, follow me." And you know what Matthew did? He left this beautiful Sea of Galilee to follow Jesus. He left everything. He even left his very aggressive lifestyle, aggressive towards many others. He left everything to follow Jesus, to change his life, to become a servant of others, to bring light into the world and not darkness. How much darkness did he bring for a lot of people at times? With his harsh demands backed up by the Roman soldiers. Maybe there were evictions, maybe people were put out of work. And he became an evangelizer. He became a man who brought light into the world, who reflected God's goodness, because he himself had received mercy. I didn't time the bird there for the singing, okay? You see that? When he had received mercy, that bird went into ecstasy. So this is the story of Matthew. Amazing guy. Amazing guy. And the gospel says he left immediately. You know, I'm wondering about some of those calls in the gospels. They're kind of telegraph reports. I don't know if you know what a telegraph is anymore. But in the telegraph, you paid by letters and by words, so you kept the words as short as possible. Houston calling. That's telegraphic language, you know. Arrived. That was a telegraph. Just paid for one word and your family knew you had arrived in Sydney, Australia from Ireland. Baby boy born yesterday. So the Gospels are telegraphic language. So, and the Gospel evangelists themselves say they didn't write down everything. Matthew says that, you know, they didn't write down everything. They just wrote down the essentials. And so we hear about the call, but who knows if Matthew wasn't listening to Jesus before, kind of eavesdropping his conversations. Just going to open this gate here to go out. Just want to make sure you're going out straight there, that you don't hit your leg. So it was working on him, you know. I think a lot of the disciples, it was working, like it's working on us, you know. The good news is working on us all our lives. And then there are days when that big sunrise comes and we make that radical decision and somebody invites us and we say yes. And we were kind of waiting for that invitation in a way to be expressed formally. And then we came along and said yes. And our life changed. And the alcoholic stopped drinking. Sometimes that needs a lot of help. And the person who had failing health finally decides, I'm going to the doctor. We're all sorry that Daniel didn't do that much earlier because he could still be playing music. I like to go back here to see the sun and the water. Our friend is still here. Learned a little bit more about him. He came to Israel about 16 years ago. He speaks Spanish fluently. And he's enjoying these days here on his own at the Sea of Galilee, Jewish guy. We charge his battery for him for his phone. He needs a lot of water these days, so he's over with his bottles to refill. Special way to spend the new year here at the Sea of Galilee. Not a stir in the leaves, so still. It's an interesting thing about Jesus' community that one of the guys was called the Zealot, and the Zealot was anti-Roman fiercely. The Zealots are the ones that stood up against Rome, which led to the destruction of Jerusalem, as the Romans knew they couldn't mess with the Zealots, and the Zealots didn't want anything to do with Rome. They wanted to kick them out with the sword. And Simon the Zealot is a member of Jesus' community, as is a tax collector who was working for the Roman Empire, crushing the people. And Jesus' community brings them all together. Amazing. I actually put in a little connection for you there into the text, a link that you can check later, and the link is to a beautiful talk about Matthew, collecting all the essentials and seeing beautiful interpretations. And one of the comments quoted from about 1600 years ago was how the fisherman was the normal life here, was like the lower class life, the normal class, the normal folks. And Jesus called normal folks to follow him. And then ostracized folks, tax collectors, was not a very respectable profession. It was kind of associated with treachery and traitors. So, Jesus called everybody from everywhere and from their work, right in the middle of their work. And the fishermen left their nets, and Matthew left his desk at the office. And he just went and followed Jesus, and was transformed, completely transformed. And look at the legacy, the gospel that he brought. And he wrote it in Hebrew. There are ancient witnesses, written witnesses to the fact that Matthew wrote in Hebrew first. And we don't have any copy of the Hebrew left, an extant copy. We only have the Greek version of his gospel, the Greek translation. And none of us read that either, mostly, we read in English or in Spanish or whatever language you're reading. So it's interesting to see this. The time is running out. We had a lot of different thoughts. So just let's look at the readings for today. And it's basically the call of Matthew, obviously. So it changes the routine of the readings. And there's the first reading is also considering the vocation of the apostles, these 12 who follow Jesus. And so it's a special reading from St. Paul, and I love it. It's from the letter to the Ephesians. And Paul starts off saying, I, a prisoner for the Lord, because he was in prison in Rome, urge you to live in a manner worthy of the call you have received. And then he goes on to mention a whole list of people, and he gave some as apostles, others as prophets, others evangelists, others as pastors, others as teachers. Wow! It was already that very early time. There were already so many different roles in the work of bringing the good news to the world. Evangelists, pastors, teachers, prophets, apostles, so many different ones. And so we can come from whatever background, and we can have such a varied type of role. And to accept that, and to love it, and to develop it. It's more than enough, instead of envying the one role or the other. Oh, I was a Matthew, I wish I was an evangelist, I wish I was converted by Christ. Well, be that today, wherever you are. Even if you're in the lowest or most despicable type of human society, doesn't appreciate what you do, you're looked down upon, you're no good, you're repugnant, what you do is frowned upon, you're doing that, okay. There's a little guy down here in the water. I gotta see him. But he just disappeared. He's making all kinds of circles. There's a number of them around the place. I started noticing them. And they're very close to the surface, but they don't show their face. So I guess you have to live in expectation that we'll see them someday if they jump out of the water and we catch them on time. So God gave every one of us a different role, and He called us from a different place, and we can bring a lot of light into the world. We can be a reflection wherever we are. And the beautiful line from the Psalm is always for the apostles. Their message goes out through all the earth. Their message goes out through all the earth. And that's your message as well. It will go out through all the earth. So people, look at the readings, check them out. Check out that beautiful text. It's actually from Pope Benedict. It's an amazing, beautiful text. The man is so learned, so incredible, so deep, so simple in his expression. Such a learned man explaining things so simply. I encourage you to read it. It'll do you a lot of good. And with that, I'll be saying goodbye from this sunrise stroll and chat here at the Sea of Galilee. Thank you for joining us. Say a little prayer in gratitude for... Oh, there's a bird over there putting up her head. So that's the lady that's under the water. She has a long time she can be down below the water. I just saw her. Way over there now, like about 50 steps from here. But I don't walk on water, so steps on land. And may the Lord bless you and hold you in the palm of His hand, and may you be light in the world today. God bless you. See you later, alligator.